the air with Hurricane Fiona closing in on Bermuda. The storm already causing a ton of damage and two more storms right on its heels. We're going to be live from the island coming up. And in tonight's original, a look at what happens after storms like these that cause major flooding in the U.S. and almost nobody here with flood insurance. How FEMA's trying to change that. Plus, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones taking the stand. And just within the last hour or so, boy, did things get real fiery. One lawyer telling Jones directly that his lies about the Sandy Hook school shooting put a target on people's backs. What else Jones said in court just now that has the judge pretty ticked. And those Tylenol murders from 40 years ago, remember Tylenol laced with cyanide? You might have heard about it. Investigators may now be closing in on a suspect. What's behind the comeback for this hugely consequential case? And folks apparently using a diabetes drug to try and lose weight. And now there's a shortage. Why TikTok might have something to do with it a little bit later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie. And even though it feels kind of weird to say that an entire ocean is on fire, that's sort of what's happening in the Atlantic when it comes to hurricanes. With Fiona, now a Category 4, Gaston, a tropical storm right on its heels, and another storm forming that could smack the Gulf Coast soon. And forgive the mixed metaphors, but clearly, when it rains, it pours. And that's exactly what they're getting ready for in Bermuda. Tons of water, tons of rain, maybe some dangerous flash flooding. With Fiona expected to slam the island from the west side tonight, and conditions getting worse for the 64,000 people who live there. In Puerto Rico, close to 1 million people do not have power even now, even 5 days after Fiona hit there. President Biden today issuing a disaster declaration to get more money and more help to where it's needed. And we're talking about a storm that's only gotten stronger since it hit Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic as a Category 1, remember. It picked up steam as a Category 3, hitting Turks and Caicos. And now, before it's done, it could go down as the strongest storm to ever hit Canada later this week. Keep in mind, Fiona is the first major hurricane of what's been a slow season so far, but it's probably not the last, with these other storms coming up right behind it. Warnings now being issued for Tropical Storm Gaston, and we're also keeping an eye on that tropical disturbance. Bill Cairns is going to join us in a moment with the very latest update from the National Hurricane Center. He's getting the readout now, but I want to get to Morgan Chesky. What is the latest where you are?
Yeah, Hallie, good afternoon. And we're here in St. George's, Bermuda, and I can tell you that the calm before the storm is officially over. There was broken sunshine this morning. That has disappeared. The wind's starting to pick up, and we anticipate feeling the rain from those outer bands of Fiona here within the next few hours. We have been told by the Minister of National Security that he's encouraging everyone to be off the roads by 10 p.m. The worst of this storm expected to happen overnight, peaking at around 5 a.m. Important to note, Hallie, as you mentioned, we're not expecting a direct hit by Fiona, but it's such a massive hurricane. Even if it drops a little bit in strength to a Category 3 from the Category 4 where it is right now, it could still produce flooding in low-lying areas, and the wind could prove to be a real issue here on the island and cause potential power outages, similar to what we've seen in Turks and Caicos and Puerto Rico. Right now, as we stand in front of St. George's Bay, the wind is starting to pick up. Businesses are closed, windows boarded up, everyone crossing their fingers and hoping that it stays on its current course, because even if it shifts a little bit to the east, it could pose a significant problem for this small island nation about 600 miles to the east of the Carolinas. Hallie? And
I wonder, Morgan, you know, Bermuda doesn't often get hit directly by hurricanes. They still feel it, right? They still feel the impact. So is there a sense that this is kind of, more of the same, you know, from folks you're talking to, or do people feel a little bit more on edge?
Yeah, good point there. Government officials say one of their biggest concerns is complacency because this isn't looking like a direct hit. They're reminding everyone that Fiona is an incredibly powerful hurricane, and they don't have to look too far back to remind everyone how dangerous these storms can be. In 2014, Hurricanes Faye and then Gonzalo struck this island within 1 week of each other, a true double whammy. A lot of residents here tell me they still remember that all too well. Meanwhile, back in 2003, Hurricane Fabian was the one that really changed how people viewed hurricanes on this island. They may not get as frequently as, say, a state on the Gulf Coast or in the Caribbean, but people know how powerful these storms can be, and that is why they're encouraging everyone to shelter in place. We have been told if there is a silver lining whatsoever to this storm approaching Bermuda, it is that the building code here has been updated over the years. Any building here that goes up now has to withstand 110 miles an hour. And as it stands right now, the winds they anticipate from Fiona not expected to break 100 miles an hour, at least for now. Hallie?
You can see it, though, the wind, even behind you, Morgan, the wind really picking up some speed there. Thank you, Morgan Chesky. I know I'll be checking back in with you in the days and in the hours to come. Appreciate it. Bill Cairns is just fresh off that National Hurricane Center update. Give it to us, Bill. What's the scoop?
Fiona's locked in. We haven't had any changes in the forecast in about 2 days. The disturbance, the other areas of the Atlantic are a lot more questionable. So let's start with the latest. Still a Category 4. It's only 300 miles away from Bermuda, but it will pass roughly about 100 to 150 miles to the west. That'll bring tropical storm force winds to the area, minor power outages, a lot of rain, but it's not going to be a huge destruction. Don't expect to see pictures of a lot of destruction tomorrow. So that's the closest approach late tonight into early tomorrow, and it should begin to weaken as it goes over cooler water down to a Category 3. As far as the East Coast goes, already we have rip currents reported. There's huge swells that are arriving. Great for the surfers, bad for the swimmers. So just be prepared. Any of the beaches on the East Coast, you will notice an uptick in the waves and the frequency and the size of them over the next couple of days. And then our poor friends in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. So Nova Scotia has a population of about 1 million people. Half of them live in Halifax, which is on the west side of the storm, quote unquote the weaker side, but they still could see winds to 80 to 90 miles per hour. About 500,000 people live in Newfoundland, and about 100,000 of them, the biggest city is St. John. So the area that it's actually making landfall is pretty remote. There's a lot of forests that are going to get crushed and just trampled with one of the strongest storms ever in Canada, but that'll be it. I was talking to some of our people in that area that haven't experienced stuff like this, Hallie, and they're asking what they can do. And all these great recommendations from our friends in Florida and Louisiana, they're telling people, fill every water container you have. Download Netflix stuff now, because when you don't have power, you're going to have nothing to watch on your devices. Power up all of your devices. Fill your bathtub with water. Yeah. So that's the kind of things they're doing now.
What is so interesting, Bill, and we sort of alluded to it at the top of the show, some experts who say the Atlantic is kind of on fire in a way. There is so much activity happening right now. I know you're tracking not just Fiona, but a couple of other serious things that look to be on the radar quite literally.
Yeah, we are all eyes as we go throughout the weekend will be on what happens in the Caribbean. So this is the next area of concern. What you're looking at here is all of our different weather computers, and they all give us an output of where they think the storm will be in about 5 to 7 days from now. The two most reliable long-range computers we have, the European model, takes it towards South Florida as early as Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. But if it goes out more into the Gulf, like our American GFS model, it could be somewhere towards the northern Gulf. So where it's too far away, the storm hasn't even formed yet to put the initial data into our computer. So the accuracy is not really there yet. This is about a 700-mile error gap between Cancun and the Keys. So, Hallie, we have to wait and see what happens with this over the weekend. We definitely have a significant and possibly serious threat next week, but it's too early to say for who.
Bill Cairns, you'll be back. I know. Thank you. We're getting a new timeline now from the so-called special master, that third party overseeing the classified documents taken from Mar-a-Lago and figuring out what gets sorted where. Just within the last maybe hour or so, he's telling both sides late today he's given them 4 weeks to hand over detailed lists of what was taken from the former president's property and work out any disagreements. It comes as Republican senators on Capitol Hill are kind of breaking ranks with Mr. Trump. They really don't seem super willing to play along with his suggestion that presidents can declassify material simply by thinking about it.
I think there's a process for declassifying documents, and I think it ought to be adhered to and followed.
All of this coming after what is probably the biggest headline in this whole thing in the last 24 hours, which is a court victory, a big win for the Justice Department, with an appeals court giving them the green light to get access again to a bunch of those classified documents as they pick back up their investigation into what Mr. Trump took from the White House to Mar-a-Lago and what he did with it. I want to bring in now Kelly O'Donnell. And Kelly, it was kind of a smackdown, that ruling against the original judge in this case. They're saying, yes, the DOJ does not have to pause its investigation, and there were 2 Trump-appointed judges on that panel.
Yes, 3 judges working together from the 11th Circuit, and their views were very strong going against the claims made by plaintiff Trump in this case. And what it does is it gives the Department of Justice that immediate access back to the more than 100 classified documents that were a part of the search that was executed in early August, so they can again use those for their criminal investigation and to continue the work in terms of the national security assessment. Also today, the special master in that outline that you referenced there, putting some pressure on the Trump legal team to say by a certain date, September 30th, if I remember correctly, that they must provide his court with any dispute about any items that they think were not on the list that was provided by the government of things taken from the residents or things that were not listed that they believe were taken. So basically, did the FBI give a proper accounting of what was removed, or are there other things that the former president, is alleging were taken? So what that effectively does, and it's written in very polite, sort of standard language, but when you really contemplate what it's saying is Judge Deary in New York is saying to the Trump legal team, if you don't believe the FBI gave accurate information, then you've got to say it in a legal filing. And that puts pressure on the lawyers who, as officers of the court, must knowingly convey truthful information. So that is critical in putting some pressure on the lawyers who have been so far trying to give some distance between themselves and things like, did the former president actually declassify materials? Now we know it was a thought process and not necessarily a formal process. It's been murky, but in his interview with Sean Hannity, he talked about it's something you could think about instead of a much more formal process.
Let me play it so people can hear it. Roll it.
If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it.
That, as some Republicans are pointing out, that's not actually the case. There is a process, but politically, Kelly, this is the case that the former president is making in a court of public opinion, and it seems like the thing that he wants his base to buy into.
And, Hallie, I went back and looked at old statements that Donald Trump, as a candidate in 2016 and early as a president, when he talked about declassifying, and I could find no instance where he talked about it as a thought process. And, in fact, when he was talking as a candidate about, especially in reference to Hillary Clinton and her issues, he was very black and white about how the rules must be followed. And so the ball has moved when it comes to classification and the powers therein for Donald Trump in this position now, and he wants a much broader definition of what his powers have been. And he has been very reluctant to lay it down and say what he did do. And we know that of the 11,000 pages there were 100 taken in August and a few hundred others that the government has retrieved from Mar-a-Lago that were all with different levels of classification. Were they declassified in any known way? That remains a question even now. Hallie?
Kelly O'Donnell live for us from outside the White House. Kelly, thank you. To some news on the January 6 investigations, plural now. One defendant who stormed the Capitol and claimed he didn't know Congress worked there was sentenced today to 4 years in federal prison, with the judge accusing this guy of basically straight up lying, not him, the other defendant, of saying he didn't know that Congress worked in the Capitol building. That defendant himself acknowledging it was idiotic to think that. This is Stephen Ayers, another defendant. You may remember his face because it was everywhere at one of the January 6 hearings. He testified in front of that select committee about what he had gone through. He says, chagrined. He's sentenced to 2 years probation and community service. All of it just days before the second season, if you will, of the committee's hearings, which start back up again on Wednesday. And we're learning the committee has finally now come to an agreement with Ginny Thomas for an interview sometime soon, TBD on exactly when. She, of course, is a conservative activist and the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. The committee wants to get into those emails and text messages showing she had some kind of tangential involvement in those fake elector schemes, those conversations about overturning the legitimate results of the 2020 election. Allie, so a couple of things. Ginny Thomas, let's start there, because this is interesting. You and I have both talked with members of the Select Committee who have said they would be intrigued to hear what she has to say. Well, now they're going to get their chance.
Finally, I think some of them would say, because this is something that's been months in the making. I mean, I remember in the early days of these hearings asking Benny Thompson after each and every one, we would see more text messages between Ginny Thomas and Mark Meadows, or emails between Ginny Thomas and John Eastman, emails that she sent to certain states where there were false elector schemes at play. They want to know more about all of those things, and they already have a lot of information on them. It's why Benny Thompson, just in the last few minutes before I came on here, was telling our team on the Hill, they're not rushing to do this before the next hearing next week.
Okay, so that's important. That's a super interesting piece of information, because it is, what is today?
Tuesday, Wednesday?
Thursday?
Sure.
Whatever today is, right? Whatever. The hearing's in a week. Time is a flat circle. So we're not going to see like tape deposition probably in the next hearing from Ginny Thomas. It sounds like that's the signal that Benny Thompson's giving.
It doesn't sound like
that's super interesting.
Which is interesting, but at the same time, they don't need it. They have so many things that they say we haven't seen yet from key people like Cassidy Hutchinson and others who gave compelling testimony that they want to put more meat on the bone with. And I think the thing I'm watching is they haven't explicitly set the theme for this publicly. Thompson says they're doling out parts. Each member is going to have a role to play, right? It is sort of that TV analogy. We're going into season 2.
But it's a short season. It's just one episode, right? I mean, as far as we know, this is it.
It's like it went from network TV to like Netflix. We're going to do the season, but it's not the end, right? It's sort of like the beginning of the end, where this will be a hearing that looks like the other hearings, but we also expect that when they do an interim report and then definitely for the final report, our understanding, at least right now, is that that could still come with a hearing attached to it.
But there is a deadline. Like, there's a ticking clock here because with the what are we, 47 days out from the midterms now? And if Republicans take by the House of Representatives, I think everyone understands that this committee is basically DOA.
They are, but I think we're operating on the timeline of, okay, November is your ticking clock deadline. That's actually not the deadline that Benny Thompson has given me. December 31st.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's when
operating
right. Congress still exists past the midterm, so they've got till the end of the year. Allie, I'm getting a little bit of breaking news in from a producer. It is Thursday, I'm told.
Yeah.
That today is Thursday.
Thank you so much for that.
To clear that up. Thank you. Good to see you. Appreciate it. A U.S. official telling NBC News today that what we saw from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov at the UN Security Council meeting was another sign of weakness. They're talking about how Lavrov only showed up for the meeting to say his piece, to give his speech, and then he left. In his remarks, he accused the U.S. of covering up Ukraine's crimes and called Ukraine a totalitarian Nazi-like state. Then he basically peaced out. Right after, Secretary of State Antony Blinken also spoke, or right before, rather, saying Ukraine literally, quite literally, is fighting for its future. Watch.
One man can end it. Because if Russia stops fighting, the war ends. If Ukraine stops fighting, Ukraine ends.
It's coming as we're seeing some kind of extraordinary scenes out of Russia. People coming out by the thousands, Russians, to protest after Russian President Vladimir Putin called up more reservists to fight. More than 1,300 demonstrators have now been arrested. And look at what's happening at some of the borders of Russia. Tons of people lining up. They are desperate to get out. They are trying to get somewhere else. Aaron McLaughlin joins us now. And Aaron, everything that we're seeing overseas with Russia and Ukraine is against the backdrop now of what has gone down in New York at that General Assembly. Lavrov came in, said what he had to say, and then left, with Russia making clear this is not about dialogue at this point.
Yeah, that's right. In the view of Ukrainian officials I've been speaking to, Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to create the perception that he's burning all bridges behind him, creating no other option but to press on with this brutal war. And he signaled that earlier this week in his announcement of his intention, essentially, to annex occupied territories here in Ukraine. If and when he does that, essentially, he's making it a constitutional obligation of the Kremlin to press forward with a full-scale war in defense of those territories as part of Russia. And Ukrainian officials I've been talking to say this is all part of the Kremlin posturing, trying to make it look as dangerous an option as possible for the West to continue its support for Ukraine, knowing full well that without Western support, Ukrainian forces would be in big trouble. Hallie.
It's also interesting, you know, as we talk about protests in Russia, we're seeing people trying to escape the country, some of them presumably hoping to avoid having to stay and get caught up in the fight. You're in Ukraine. This is an escalation by Russia now. How do they see it?
Well, I spent today with Ukrainian soldiers who were essentially patrolling this area of Ukraine not far from where I'm at now, Kharkiv. They took me inside of a Ukrainian church that had been converted by Russian forces into a field hospital and staging area, showing me this ransacked church, which essentially illustrated just how quickly Russian soldiers had to leave this area, leaving behind a whole treasure trove of equipment. I asked them about the additional 300,000 reservists that President Putin plans to call up and is now mobilizing, and they told me that this makes no difference to them, that they are going to continue on, and that those reservists, in their minds, will die. Take a listen.
A lot of people without good preparing, without good equipment, it's just fresh meat for us.
And we're hearing from Ukrainian officials, including President Zelensky, appealing directly to those Russian reservists that are reluctant to participate in this war, that are now being called up, saying that if they come here to Ukraine, urging them to surrender, that Ukrainians will welcome their surrender. Hallie.
Aaron McLaughlin live for us in Ukraine. Aaron, thank you so much. Back here at home, things getting super intense today inside a Connecticut courtroom, with conspiracy theorist Alex Jones getting defensive on the stand, saying he is done apologizing over spreading lies about the Sandy Hook massacre being a hoax. It obviously was not. Listen to what went down.
Is this a struggle session? Are we in China? I've already said I'm sorry hundreds of times, and I'm done saying I'm sorry. But I legitimately thought it might have been staged, and I stand by that, and I don't apologize for it.
And don't apologize, Mr. Jones. Please don't apologize.
No, I've already apologized to the parents over and over again.
We know
I don't apologize to you.
Objection.
This is the first time Jones has been inside that courtroom since trial started, but he's been outside the courthouse all week. It's the first time he's been on the stand, rather. But outside, he's told reporters for days the trial is, in his words, a travesty of justice. Keep in mind, what is at stake here? The jury is only trying to figure out how much money Jones and the InfoWars parent company have to pay victims' families for the fact that Jones spread lies about Sandy Hook. Remember, he was already found liable for the lies. That's not in question. What's in question now is the money factor. And this is separate from a trial you might remember in August in Texas, where Jones was ordered to pay almost $50 million to the parents of a Sandy Hook victim. Ron Allen joins us now. And Ron, what was interesting about today is, for most of the day, and Jones was on trial on the stand for most of the day, tense, but sort of not polite, but like normal, right? The judge had given this warning, like she didn't want to hear anything. This wasn't a radio show. She wanted everybody to kind of keep it on the level. But then things erupted just in the last hour. We played a little bit of it. It sounds like it was sparked by a video that was played in the courtroom. Tell us more.
Exactly. At the end of the day, one of the attorneys for the family played a video of one of the parents, Robbie Parker, who lost his daughter Emily in the massacre. The video was of Parker's comments right after this happened, after he'd lost his daughter. And remember, Alex Jones has called the parents actors. The families have said that they've endured years of harassment, not just online, but in person, death threats. And that's what the essence of the trial is about, this defamation charge. But when the attorney played the video and confronted Jones about it, here's what happened in court. Take a listen.
You put a target on his back just like you did every single parent and loved one sitting here, didn't you?
No, I didn't. It's just, you're unbelievable. You switch on emotions on and off when you want. It's just ambulance chasing.
So things went on from there with more back and forth, and that's what we're going to expect as the trial continues. Jones is going to be back on the stand tomorrow. It started off with him being forced to acknowledge that he had called the judge a tyrant and had a picture of the judge on InfoWars with red lasers coming out of her eyes. And he was also forced to acknowledge in questioning that he had called the whole thing a kangaroo court, because even though he has not been inside the courtroom, there's been a running commentary outside the courtroom and on InfoWars during the week or so that this has been underway. And, of course, this is the second trial. During the first trial, there was a lot of emotion, a lot of outbursts. And today, again, the judge told the attorneys that she's ready to have a contempt hearing if this continues and gets out of hand. So, and this is not a surprise, and we'll see what happens. Jones has been, he's just been really combative. And the judge has said several times, this is not a show, this is a courtroom, and demanding decorum.
I think at one point it was reported that she said something like, do you need me to his lawyer, do you need me to physically restrain your client, like to stop him from talking, because things were getting so combative and so heated. But what is so important, Ron, to center here, and I know that it's important to you, is the families here, because this is so emotional. These are families of victims of that horrific Sandy Hook massacre, who have been traumatized again by people who have taken up this conspiracy theory from Jones that, oh, it's fake, oh, it's not real, et cetera. None of that is true. And the trial has focused on data showing InfoWars sales spiked when Jones talked about Sandy Hook. And the accusation is he lied about this for profit.
Exactly. And a lot of the trial has been about analytics. And that's why a judgment has been entered against Jones, why he's already been found guilty of defamation, if you will, because he refused to provide information to the court about these analytics and about the company's profits. And yes, essentially the charge, the allegation is that he made money, that there's evidence that shows that viewership and traffic to his sites spiked when he was talking about this hoax, and that's why he did it.
Ron Allen, thank you so much for being on top of this. I am sure we'll talk again tomorrow with Jones, as you say, back on the stand. Coming up, a big update on the mastermind of this massive Navy scandal. Fat Leonard, that's what they call him, now caught after weeks on the run. It's a wild story. We'll tell you how officials found him. Plus, why the CIA is releasing a new podcast. That's right, the nation's most secretive agency out with a little podcast. We're going to talk about it in just a sec. All right, so take a look at the guy on your screen right now. Do you recognize him? He's this military contractor known as Fat Leonard. And when we left his story last, Fat Leonard had orchestrated a huge military corruption scandal and then vanished into thin air. I said it. He'd been under house arrest in San Diego since 2018, but then a couple weeks ago, he takes off his GPS tracker. He goes on the run. But now, in the latest chapter of this real-life Catch Me If You Can, he has, in fact, been caught. Authorities got him at an airport in Venezuela. They say he was coming from Mexico and trying to get to Russia. Fat Leonard had pleaded guilty in 2015 for offering prostitutes, fancy hotels, other bribes to Navy officials to try to help his ship company. This was a huge deal when it happened. Sam Brock is joining us now. And Sam, this was not, it didn't seem, according to officials, like some spur-of-the-moment thing where Fat Leonard rips it off and just like spontaneously goes on the run. They think he's been planning for this for a while. They've been looking for him for weeks. How'd they get him?
Yeah, you can't just, as you say, Hallie, vanish into thin air when you have been part of the worst corruption scandal in the history of the U.S. Navy. So the how of this is probably the most interesting but fascinating and mystifying part. How did he get away with it? Let's talk about what we know right now, which is to say that he cut off the GPS bracelet, like you said. That triggered pretrial services that got an alert that there's something wrong with this bracelet. They contact Fat Leonard's attorneys, who go down there, check the house, because he had a history of health problems, which is why he was under house arrest in the first place. Cannot find him. They contact San Diego police. San Diego police goes down there, can't find Leonard. All they find is the bracelet. However, neighbors describe, Hallie, U-Hauls being parked out of his house, outside of his house, for days prior to this escape. So is it possible that U.S. Marshals went back and was able to locate maybe the license plates on those U-Hauls and track that to Mexico? We don't know exactly, but it's certainly a potential avenue. They say he goes through Mexico, then to Cuba, and then from Cuba to Venezuela. Now, the scariest part about all this, he was apprehended in Venezuela. We know that he overcharged the federal government $35 million, all the briberies, but also there was classified information involved, and he was on his way, Hallie, to Russia. What is this man's relationship with Russia, possessing classified information? That's really another layer to all of this that isn't getting talked about as much.
It's such an important point, Sam. Why is he trying to get to Russia for, right? The point is now he is caught. He is in custody. He's going to stay in Venezuela in custody. But at some point, you'd think he has to be extradited back to the U.S. When?
That is the big question, because we're talking about dealing with Venezuela now. And of course, the United States doesn't recognize Maduro's government there. It is a deteriorating situation, one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. And so are we expecting Venezuela now to just extradite someone that the United States wants to not just prosecute, but ultimately put in jail? That really is, what's the chip involved? What does Venezuela get out of all of this? We know that the Interpol director says that they're starting the judicial process of extradition now, but are they going to deliver on that? Are they going to deliver without seeing some sort of sanctions relieved? Are there other diplomatic interests that Venezuela wants to do it? That is an open-ended question.
And who knows how long that's going to take. Sam Brock, it is a fascinating sort of mystery here. Thanks for being on top of it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, another earthquake is slamming southwest Mexico. Officials there in Mexico City say at least one person has died after she fell at her house. The earthquake apparently damaged some buildings, set off landslides. Remember, there was a big one that hit Monday that killed at least 2 people in Mexico. Number 2, people who had COVID are at higher risk for brain injuries within the first year after being infected. This is according to a study, a new one, published in Nature Medicine today. Researchers found that brain disorders, other neurological problems were seen 7% more often in people who had COVID compared to people who were never infected. They said that's something like 6.5 million people who had brain problems linked to their COVID infections. Number 3, Tesla recalling more than 1 million cars in the U.S. because the windows can pinch your fingies when it's being automatically rolled up. The company says they don't know of anybody with pinched fingers, any injuries or claims, but you know, they just want to get it right. It's part of an online software update. Tesla says it's already started pushing that update to cars. Number 4, an Indiana judge today blocking the state's new abortion ban from being enforced. Abortion clinics are arguing that this new law is unconstitutional under that state's constitution. So the judge's ruling means that, at least for now, there is more access to abortion, basically. There are more abortion rights, at least while this court case moves forward. Number 2, that 4-day work week experiment we've told you about before in the UK just hit its halfway point. So how's it going? The group running it says of the 41 companies that responded to its survey, 95% of them say productivity has either improved significantly, improved slightly, or stayed about the same, meaning same or better. I'd call that a win. As a 4-day work weeker experimenter this summer, it was a win for us. Some surprise news today from the CIA, America's top spy agency, now stepping out of the shadows and into the audio realm, doing what every other influencer is doing and starting its own podcast. It's called The Langley Files. It's a play on where the CIA is located, Langley, Virginia. The first episode dropping today. And of course, the first interview was with the agency director, Bill Burns. Director Burns says he wants to demystify spy work and let the public know a little bit about how the agency operates. Dan DeLuce joins me now. And Dan, there is a catch because it's how the agency operates, but without giving away some secrets. What's so interesting here is spy work has such a mystique around it, right? There's the movies, there's all this. And now it's like the CIA kind of pulling back the curtain with this podcast here.
Yes, and, you know, I suppose there's a risk here that they destroy the mystique, perhaps, and jeopardize the mystery that, in a way, they've always relied on. But this is a different era, and the agency really is keen to recruit a more diverse workforce. And the new director, Bill Burns, is more inclined to openness, and so they think this podcast is a way of reaching a wider audience. Perhaps that'll help their recruitment and also sort of explain to the American people a bit more about what they do. But I think there are going to be some CIA veterans who are going to be unhappy with this and a little uncomfortable with the idea. It's hard to imagine during the Cold War one of the former CIA directors sitting down for a podcast and talking about this. By the way, Burns joked a bit in the podcast and said that his life is a long way from the Hollywood depiction about spies racing around in race cars. He says his wife and his daughters make fun of him for driving around in a Subaru at the posted speed limit, and the only gadget he can work is a Roku remote.
Nothing wrong with Subarus at the speed limit. You have to think this is going to be vetted, Dan, right? It's not like people are going on and talking about spy stuff, you know, however they want to. There's clearly processes and procedures in place so that the public only knows as much as the CIA wants us to know.
Yes, there are no major revelations coming here. This will be sanitized and maybe not so sexy as a James Bond film.
Dan DeLuce, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Still to come, a lot of Americans do not have flood insurance, even if it turns out they need it, which could lead to a kind of double disaster. Water destroying your home and no money to pay for it. We'll tell you how FEMA is now trying to change that when we come back. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on topic we've been keeping an eye on. And listen, we've talked about severe weather right at the top of this show with Hurricane Fiona, Tropical Storm Gaston. And of course, these are storms that end with some really bad flooding. Whether or not you live in a high-risk flood area, you can get flood insurance. Problem is, not a lot of people realize they should think about it. And even if they do, they might not be able to afford it. It's expensive. So now FEMA is rolling out a new insurance pricing plan that could encourage more people to get covered before the next storm hits. Question is that going to be enough? Jesse Kirsch reports.
As July's ferocious waters barreled through eastern Kentucky, Willie Bush says the floods gutted his home. It had to be torn down.
Where we're standing, this used to be your home.
It used to be my house.
Completely gone now.
Gone.
Miles away, James and Karen Deedon say they escaped to their barn's loft as water engulfed their house.
If the barn had washed away, I don't know how to saved her. Couldn't have. But I would have. Because you got to be determined.
Now they all tell us they're starting over with less financial help than they'd want.
Even though he lived this close to water for years, Willie Bush says he never even thought about getting flood insurance. Then he finally did, but still didn't buy any because it cost too much.
My daughter lived in this, and she made $13 an hour. Now, she couldn't start to afford $500 a month for flood insurance. So what that meant, I had to pay $500 for her and $500 myself.
The Deedons say they couldn't imagine needing insurance since the creek can be this low.
It's not something you ever thought could be needed.
Never thought it could be used. I said, that's a waste of money.
But according to FEMA, both families live in high-risk flood areas and should have considered flood insurance.
I just showed you that map. Is that something you had any idea about?
No, it's the first I've ever heard of something like that.
FEMA says, according to its data, only about 4% of people in the U.S. have flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program, with many others thinking it's part of their homeowners policy or just not needed.
Over a third of the claims that we pay every year are outside of the mandatory purchase high-risk area.
Areas where people need flood insurance if their mortgage lender is government-backed. Dovey Beck lives in nearby Jackson, Kentucky. She says her bank also required flood insurance for her mortgage.
In a way, you're lucky that the bank made you have it.
Yes, and I will keep it.
But some people may not be able to afford that insurance. Enter FEMA's new Risk Rating 2.0, hoping to calculate insurance costs using each property's unique risk factors.
Lower value, lower risk properties were paying too much, and higher value and higher risk properties were not paying enough.
2.0 also aims to warn people how high their premium could jump down the road.
We think that's incredibly important as we continue to deal with climate change, is to really pull back the veil and raise the visibility to homeowners on what their flood risk is.
FEMA projects during the first year of new pricing, almost a quarter of existing plans will see premiums drop. But while FEMA is promising equity, the new plan still doesn't account for how much money someone makes. That means low-income Americans could still be priced out of the market.
We need help from lawmakers to give us the statutory authority to consider affordability.
Sadly, I'm afraid that the flood insurance might be priced out of their market and that they'll just leave. And that's my fear, is that we're going to lose our population.
But some, like the Deedons, say they hope to rebuild, now armed with information they could have used much sooner.
Jesse is joining us now. Jesse, thank you so much for bringing us that reporting. What is the financial factor now with some of these families you talked with? How are they rebuilding? How are they paying for that?
Yeah, the people we've spoken with are lucky enough to have family and friends giving them everything from a trailer to live in temporarily, places to stay. But there are people who unfortunately seem to have lost even more, may not have someone to lean on like that in this time of need. The family we spoke with, the Deedons, they say they got $2,000 roughly from FEMA. Willie Bush says he got $1,500 from FEMA. But at the same time, Hallie, it's important to stress that FEMA says through the National Flood Insurance Program, people who had insurance policies have seen more than $13 million paid out already. So underscoring the value of a policy like that in this time of need. But at the same time, make no mistake, there are communication issues around flood insurance. I had trouble looking some of this information up online. I was constantly asking questions, and we know that people in these communities have been asking questions, which will become all the more important, Hallie, as we deal with climate change, which is going to make extreme rainfall and flash flooding issues more frequent and more intense, Hallie.
Jesse Kirsch, thank you so much for being with us. Coming up here on the show, an exclusive on Hallie Jackson now, our Josh Letterman catching up with the Energy Secretary, sitting down one-on-one on what Russia's escalation in Ukraine might mean for gas prices here. Wait till you hear what she said. Plus, police may be moving closer to cracking a 40-year-old cold case of poisoned Tylenol tablets that killed 7 people and forever changed how all of our medicines get packaged, all that tamper-proof packaging. Started because of this. We're going to have an update next. To a Hallie Jackson Now exclusive, where today Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm is acknowledging that the Biden administration, yes, it is worried about what Russia's escalation might mean for gas prices here in the U.S., especially with those prices just started ticking back up a little bit after falling for more than 3 months. They dropped something like $1.30 a gallon, according to AAA. The secretary at an event with her Ukrainian counterpart, sitting down exclusively with our own Josh Letterman and pointing out, listen, prices are still way lower than what they were this summer.
Are you concerned about gas prices starting to go up again?
Well, I mean, the increase is less than 1 penny. We have obviously seen huge drops.
Josh is joining us now here on set. It's so good to see you, and it's great to have this interview here on the show, so thank you. Obviously, there is a concern from the Energy Secretary about what's happening with energy here at home, right? Huge concern, though, for Europe because they rely so much on energy that is being affected by this war in Ukraine.
That's right, Hallie. And the big fear is that President Putin is counting on a gas shortage as we move into the winter months when it's colder and people need to use their heat to really lower the resolve that Western allies, the U.S. and the Europeans have had to continue with these punishing sanctions on Russia. That people are going to say, look, at this point, I have to prioritize my own gas bill. And one of the things—
Does it erode the resolve? Basically?
Exactly. Yeah. Now, so far, there haven't been too many signs that that resolve is eroding. But one thing that is happening that's very concerning is some of these countries like France and Germany, they have been shifting back to coal, which they were trying to phase out because it's available and it's cheap. And so I asked Secretary Granholm whether that's a concern for the clean energy and climate change goals that this administration has set. And she said that's okay as long as it's temporary. Take a listen.
Well, I mean, they have to supply power to their people. We totally understand that. But the overall goal, of course, is to get to net zero by 2050. If there is a year or two where they've got to resort to fossil fuels, because it is so important, obviously, to ensure that power continues to people, they know that they are also accelerating this movement to clean. Everyone is saying it. Nobody is talking about permanently going back to coal.
But in the short term, the reality is that coal prices are now at record levels after the demand prior to the war for something like coal had really fallen off as countries were trying to shift to renewable sources.
Do you see this? Do these officials see this as a reframing of some of the debate around renewable energy sources like wind and solar, which has come under criticism from some who say, well, they're not all that reliable or not as reliable as other energy sources?
Yeah, it's really fascinating how this war has become a moment to really rethink that dynamic. Yeah. Because typically people say, look, fossil fuels are the dirtiest source, but they're also really reliable when push comes to shove. But Herman Hulashenko, the Ukrainian energy minister, told me—
Who was sitting with Secretary Granholm.
Exactly. Yeah. He told me that this war has proven that it's exactly the opposite. Take a look.
All these voices that the sun and wind is not stable, the situation with war, with Ukrainian war, shows that supply for gas, for instance, from Russia is not stable, even more than the wind. And it means that you cannot rely on the supply of fossil fuels.
Both Hulashenko and Granholm saying that this war has really expedited the shift towards clean energy sources so that countries don't ever have to be reliant on a country like Russia for their energy again, Hallie.
It's the idea that it's not just Mother Nature that can be unpredictable. It's Russia in many ways, too. It's the geopolitical forces as well. It's great reporting, Josh. Thank you for bringing us that exclusive. It's good to see you on set. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Midwest Bureau, Cooper Roberts, the little 8-year-old boy who was paralyzed at that deadly July 4th shooting in Highland Park, Illinois. Well, guess what? He is finally back home. He's been spending months at the hospital. He's had multiple surgeries. He's been away from his family and his little Frenchie, George, his puppy he loves so much. Now he's home, his family releasing a statement asking for thoughts and prayers as they adjust to their new normal, sending them so much strength. From our Northeast Bureau, the head coach of the Boston Celtics might be suspended for the entire season, according to ESPN. Why? For allegedly having a consensual relationship with a member of the franchise staff. Reportedly considered a violation of the organization's code of conduct guidelines. No word on a final decision there. We'll keep an eye on it. From our Southeast Bureau, check out this match. This highway in Florida. That's beer, folks, covered in Coors Light after a semi-truck crash. Nobody was hurt, luckily, but the Florida Highway Patrol obviously had to close down that stretch of road to clean all those cans up. Prosecutors in Chicago think they may have a break in a 40-year case that changed the way we all buy and take over-the-counter medicine. We're talking about the so-called Tylenol murders. That's when 7 people died after they took Tylenol capsules that were laced with cyanide. This was back before a lot of us were born, 1982. And so you probably don't remember a day when there haven't been like tamper-proof plastic and stuff in Tylenol bottles, right? Advil bottles, et cetera. That's because of this, right? So since then, there have been these changes made so that you can't mess with medicine bottles. But for the murders themselves, nobody had ever been accountable, maybe until now. The Chicago Tribune now reporting that prosecutors and investigators are focusing on a former Chicago person who had been a suspect for years, but who denied responsibility. Joining us now is Kathy Park. This is a huge deal, Kathy, and I know it happened a long time ago, but again, the implications of it, we still feel today. I took my allergy medicine this morning, right, and it's a tamper-proof case that I open. How did prosecutors move this person from, like, longtime suspect to now true potential suspect in these murders?
Yeah, you know, this is an interesting break, right? And this was nearly a year-long investigation with the Chicago Tribune. And really, time really isn't on their side because obviously 40 years have passed since these crimes, memories fade, and people who are key sources just are no longer around. So time is really of the essence. But James Lewis is someone that has been on the radar for quite some time. And according to the Chicago Tribune, they are saying that, listen, he is not a suspect at this time, and right now there is no physical evidence linking him to the crime, but it's more circumstantial because back in 1982, at the height of the investigation, he actually wrote an extortion letter to J&J, the manufacturers of Tylenol, and he actually admitted to this crime and therefore spent 12 years in federal prison. And shortly after he was released, that is when he moved to the Boston area. And just last week, that is when the Chicago Tribune journalists were able to try to have a conversation with him, but they're not saying if whether or not they were able to get any more information out of him, though. But he has always maintained his innocence throughout the entire time.
I mean, this was such a big deal that, like, laws were changed because of these so-called Tylenol murders.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You mentioned, you know, your allergy medicine, and I have some props here. I mean, this is a Tylenol bottle, and it all kind of stems from what happened back in the 1980s here in Chicago. It's pretty difficult to mess with one of these bottles, these over-the-counter medications, and it's because what unfolded here in Chicago 40 years ago. The FDA issued widespread and tough regulations about tampering with these things. So obviously the packaging is layered. It's tough to get into one of these medications, and also Congress lawmakers passed legislation as well to make it a federal offense to mess with medication. Hallie?
Kathy Park, thank you so much for being on top of that story for us. Appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to talk about this drug called Ozempic for type 2 diabetes, but it's becoming harder to get because it's being prescribed to help people lose weight instead. Why that's now triggering a shortage for the folks who actually need this drug. We're talking about it next. If you've been on TikTok lately, or if you're a fan of some of these celebrity accounts, you might have seen people talking about or alluding to Ozempic, right? It's this drug that's meant to help people with diabetes, type 2 diabetes. But you've got folks using it to lose weight instead. And apparently for them, it's working. So obviously that's made this a real hot drug, real expensive, more than $1,000 a month if you can swing that cost. And now there's a shortage for people who actually truly need this to treat their diabetes. Here's the deal. TikTok is all over it, and so are some celebrities.
It's being used, I think, widely, not only in Hollywood, but across the general population.
Its brand name, Ozempic, a drug you inject that's meant to regulate insulin and treat type 2 diabetes.
It does improve insulin secretion, so it certainly, in that way, is a treatment for type 2 diabetes.
But now some people are using it to lose weight.
It delays what we call gastric emptying. That's how fast food leaves your stomach, so you feel full longer. And it also controls how full we feel generally. And so people eat less.
Well, doctors say it may work. Taking Ozempic for weight loss is technically off-label. That means a doctor has prescribed it for an issue it's not approved to treat, and that's allowed. But this kind of thing can have consequences in the market. Like now, there's an Ozempic shortage.
But it's part of a larger problem that we have in the United States. We have more than 200 active drug shortages right now.
Michael Gagno is a senior director at a pharmaceutical industry trade group. He says shortages like this one have been an issue for decades.
This has been a chronic problem in the United States. It's gone on for about 20 years, and we've really not done a lot to mitigate the issue.
In a statement to NBC News, the FDA says it's working closely with the manufacturers of semaglutide injection, the generic name for Ozempic, to help address the shortage of these products, and confirms healthcare professionals can choose to prescribe drugs off-label when medically appropriate. The company that makes Ozempic says they do not promote, suggest, or encourage off-label use of their medicines and are committed to fully complying with all applicable U.S. laws. And they say in terms of supply, the combo of incredible demand plus global supply constraints means some disruption in getting Ozempic to patients.
When we were talking essential medications that were required during the pandemic, that would be required for any future emergency response, and we don't have the resiliency in our drug supply chain.
Supply chain issues aside, there's also the cost factor.
The biggest issue with most of them is a barrier to accessing it is cost. They're expensive medications.
Ozempic, according to the drug maker's website, can cost around $1,350 every month.
We were always looking for the magic pill. People are always looking for the magic pill. They'd rather just take a pill and not worry about what they're eating.
Or in this instance, inject something into their bodies. Dr. John Torres is with us now. And Dr. John, this is not to villainize people who use Ozempic for weight loss, because as we noted, doctors are allowed to prescribe it off-label for this point. The question is, how do you manage the weight loss factor for folks with the people who desperately need this to control their actual diabetes?
And Hallie, that's the big question. And I think the answer is there needs to be some kind of mechanism saying here is the priority list of who should be getting them. And once priority 1, 2, 3, 4 get them, then priority 5, 6. We saw this during the pandemic with a lot of the medications, the treatments, the vaccines that came out. They prioritized certain groups initially, and then as more became available, other groups were able to get them. I think looking forward, this might be something they need to look at the same time. There were drugs in the pandemic that we noticed that had some issues, hydroxychloroquine, used off labels, and other people couldn't get them that actually needed them, Hallie.
This isn't junk science, right? Like Ozempic does work for weight loss. It's not like a pretend placebo kind of thing.
No, it's not junk science at all. And what we found out is that was the side effect that people were talking about when they were using it for their type 2 diabetes. They were also noticing this weight loss. And so that's where the attention started being focused on, the weight loss. And that's what you're seeing is happening right now, the off-label use of that. Again, there needs to be some type of prioritization system so those that need it, the diabetics in this case, can get it. And then those that can get it for weight loss can get it second and then go on down the list for that.
What do you say to people who think, well, wait a second, this sounds too good to be true. I take one injection a week and I can finally lose some weight. What's your message to those folks?
Well, my message would be this is a short-term issue right now because you can lose the weight while you're on this medication, but once you get off the medication, you go back to your old habits, which could mean some weight gain. And so it needs to be lifestyle changes that are incorporated for long-term weight loss. And like the one expert you talked to, you know, this is not a magic pill. This is not a magic injection that can get the weight off and keep it off. So you need to use other mechanisms, other techniques to make sure it stays off. And that's the important thing here.
Dr. John Torres, great to see you. Thank you for that gut check, if you will. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour. We're going to have more for you here tomorrow, same time, same place. Happy Thursday, folks. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.